This is the story of a predator engineered to dominate Earth's wildlife. It tracked, it hunted, it killed without hesitation, until one night, it didn't come back. 7 Durrell students arrived on Earth with quiet excitement. They wore standard observation gear, their eyes bright with curiosity, ready to explore Earth's moderately ranked biosphere as part of their final cross-species exam. Their task was unusual. They had permission to release a caliph, a predator from their home planet, into the wild. The caliph wasn't wild-born. It was carefully bred in a lab for perfect balance, survival skills, and hunting ability. This wasn't an attack. The whole operation had the approval of 3 scientific agencies and a joint Earth-Durrell ethics committee. The caliph was sedated, fitted with a recall chip, and gently released into a safe, remote part of the Sundarbans forest. The plan was to study how it behaved, hunted, and affected the local environment over 10 days. The humans cooperated, but they were cautious. Dr. Jonathan Rees, a 45-year-old wildlife ecologist from Florida, was chosen to supervise. He had dealt with floods, poachers, and wildfires, but this was new. From a high observation platform in the trees, Jonathan saw the caliph for the first time. 2 Durrell students stood nearby, scanning their tablets. The creature moved silently through the undergrowth, its dark skin shifting colors to match its surroundings. It had 2 sharp front limbs shaped like scythes, strong back legs, and cold, focused eyes. "How big is it?" Jonathan asked, trying not to sound impressed. 370 kilograms, answered Tayil, one of the students. It can leap over 8 meters, flatten its body to 1/9 thickness, and blend into 96% of native terrain samples. "It looks like a tiger," Jonathan said, narrowing his eyes, "but leaner, more surgical. It was designed to be superior to Earth predators in every measurable way." Jonathan only nodded. He'd heard that sort of talk before. He marked the caliph's path on his field tablet and kept his thoughts quiet. For the first 2 days, the caliph thrived. It tracked a herd of wild boars, isolated the weakest, and dispatched it cleanly with a snap of the spinal column. The students recorded the kill, annotated its efficiency, and plotted the predator's foraging arc with satisfied clicks. "Zero hesitation," one of them muttered. Jonathan said nothing. By the 4th day, the caliph had taken down 2 spotted deer and a langur, all textbook examples of ideal kills. No waste, no sport, no signs of hesitation. The Durrell praised the creature's restraint. Jonathan reviewed the autopsies quietly, took blood samples, and jotted some notes. He spent more time than usual examining claw marks. Something wasn't sitting right. That night, a soft alarm blinked on his watch. A motion-triggered field camera, 50 kilometers south, had gone dark. He frowned. That camera was tucked near the edge of the buffer zone, where the caliph had no reason to go. He zoomed in on the last few seconds of footage. A rustle in the leaves, a blur of orange. The camera blinked, stuttered, and then stopped. Jonathan double-checked the caliph's tracker. Still in Zone 2. The camera had been in Zone 4. He frowned. "Unrelated," he muttered to himself. Still, he filed the data. On day 6, the caliph stopped moving. The tracker showed it holed up in a dense grove of mangroves. It hadn't eaten in 24 hours, no movement since midnight. One Durrell suggested it might be digesting. Another thought it had gone into stealth mode to stalk larger prey. Jonathan shook his head. "It's injured." The students dismissed it. The caliph couldn't be ambushed. It had thermal scanning, environmental patterning, and a reaction time faster than a cobra. "You're underestimating Earth's predators," Jonathan warned. Tayil raised one brow. "No predator here is programmed for analytical defense." Jonathan didn't argue. He just grabbed his pack, his field kit, and a tranquilizer rifle. He didn't like heading into the zone without backup, but Earth was still technically in charge of the operation. He left a trail beacon, active, and headed out on foot. It took him 4 hours to reach the grove. Every branch creaked, every root clawed at his boots. He moved with slow, deliberate steps, tracking the signal with one hand while the other gripped the tranquilizer rifle. He found the Caliph half buried under leaf cover. Its breathing was shallow. Blood soaked its left flank. Deep puncture wounds laced its shoulder. The creature's eyes were open, dilated. It didn't resist when Jonathan knelt beside it. He checked vitals. Pulse, thready. Respirations, labored. Punctures, symmetrical, clean. Measured. Not a bore, not a mistake, a strike. Claw marks scored the creature's hide. 4 long slashes spaced precisely across the haunch. Jonathan didn't speak. He pulled gloves from his kit, pressed a saline line into the Calith's main artery, and began closing the wounds. The creature was too weak to move. He radioed the platform. "This is Reese, Calith found. It's been attacked, severe blood loss, defensive posture failed. I'm initiating retrieval." The line crackled. "By what?" Tail asked, incredulous. Jonathan stood, scanning the area. "Tiger," he said. There was a long silence. Then, "Impossible." Jonathan bent down, examined the ground. Large paw prints, no drag, no sign of a chase. "IT stalked," he muttered, got close, waited, then hit hard. He activated the emergency beacon. "Sending location, medical evac needed. Bring plasma expanders and anticoagulants. This thing's not going to last long without them." By the time the medevac team arrived, the Caliph had gone into shock. Its temperature was dropping. Jonathan had packed the wound, stabilized its spine, and kept it warm with thermal blankets. But recovery would be long and uncertain. The team sedated it again, loaded it onto the shuttle, and lifted off in silence. Back at the lab, the Durrell student stood over the recovery tank, speechless. "Something primitive did this," Teo finally said. Jonathan didn't respond. He reviewed the autopsy scans. Broken scapula, punctured lung. A bite to the neck that would have been fatal had it not missed the artery by a fraction. "This wasn't luck," he said. "This was experience." The room fell silent again. The students had designed the Caliph to outmatch instinct with calculation. But tigers don't play by simulation rules. They stalk. They wait. They know their home. And sometimes they hunt the hunter. The Caliph survived, barely. For the first 72 hours, it remained in a suspended healing state inside a climate-controlled biocell. The medical team administered plasma, IV antibiotics, synthetic skin grafts, and monitored for internal bleeding. Its left lung reinflated slowly. One rib remained fractured, though non-displaced. The creature remained sedated as regeneration protocols, half biological and half mechanical, stabilized its systems. Jonathan stayed nearby, reviewing the telemetry data over and over. The Durrell students, once confident and dismissive, now moved with careful silence. Their notes were longer, their tone subdued. "The injury to the scapula indicates a downward strike," Tail muttered. Voice low. "A creature leapt from above." "Likely from a tree," Jonathan added. "Tigers do that sometimes, especially older ones. They learn patience." He tapped through the terrain overlays. "You place the Caliph in a mixed forest buffer zone. That grove you picked, it's on the edge of male tiger territory." Tail's eyes narrowed. "Why didn't you warn us?" "I did. You assumed engineered dominance would overwrite territorial instinct." There was no argument. On day 9, the Caliph regained consciousness. It blinked once, then again. Then, slowly, agonizingly, shifted its limbs. Its pupils expanded, then narrowed. Its vital signs spiked, but not from distress, from awareness. A containment specialist adjusted the sedation dose and watched the monitors. "It's aware of what happened," the Durrell muttered. "It remembers the encounter." Jonathan nodded. Predators never forget what almost killed them. Outside the medbay, Earth officials, 2 senior xenobiologists, and the planetary ethics observer reviewed the data. The ethics officer, a soft-spoken woman named Marie Cole, was blunt. "There's no doubt the tiger ambushed it. The paw prints confirm stalking behavior. The bite pattern is textbook. But what worries us is this. She turned the screen. On it, thermal footage showed the caliph hours before the attack. It was tense, still, breathing too shallow. ETL knew it was being hunted. A Durrell professor called in from orbit watched in silence. So it was outmatched, he finally said. Jonathan shook his head. No, it wasn't overpowered. It was outthought. That tiger knew how to move without being seen. It chose its moment. It didn't need to be faster, it just had to be smarter. Back at the recovery lab, the caliph refused food. For 2 more days, it ignored its protein infusion. Its vitals remained stable, but it wouldn't respond to environmental prompts or handler cues. No aggression, no movement, just stillness. It's not just wounded, Tail said, it's confused. Because something it considered inferior almost killed it, Jonathan said. Because that wasn't supposed to happen. On the 12th day, the caliph lifted its head and turned slowly toward the nearest screen. It stared at the looping footage of a tiger moving through brush. Its eyes tracked the image until the feed repeated. Then it laid its head down and closed its eyes again. That night, Tail approached Jonathan privately. I reviewed our genetic aggression model. The caliph's response system is built around domination hierarchy. It hunts when it's in control. When that control is broken, it stalls. Jonathan nodded slowly. Now it knows fear. We didn't account for that. No, you didn't. The next phase of the study was canceled. The Durrell professors withdrew all permits for further caliph deployment on Earth. The ethics board issued a joint directive. Earth-based studies must include co-prudential awareness protocols, and all alien apex species must undergo psychological resilience testing before introduction. But the students stayed behind, not by order, by choice. We thought Earth was a control environment, one of them said, but we were the ones being studied. Instead of packing up, they asked to tour Earth's predator habitats, not as observers, but as students. Over the next 3 weeks, Jonathan took them through India's tiger reserves, Alaska's grizzly sanctuaries, and a rehabilitation center in Kenya, where orphaned lions were taught to re-enter the wild. They watched a cheetah learn to chase again. They saw a wolf pack navigate terrain with uncanny precision. They listened to biologists describe the decision-making process of a snow leopard stalking prey across icy ledges. And in every encounter, they saw the same truth. Instinct could be sharpened by environment. Intelligence wasn't always programmable. Some creatures learned by watching, waiting. Some hunted not because they were bigger, but because they were older, wiser, and harder to see coming. By the end of the 6th week, the caliph had healed enough to walk. Its gait was slower, its reaction time dulled, its interest in the tiger footage was gone. It ignored screens, ate quietly, slept longer. But when approached by handlers, it no longer responded with posture or threat. It simply stepped back, watched, and waited. It had learned caution. And in doing so, it had learned something no one expected it to learn. Not dominance. Respect. News of the tiger's ambush on the caliph didn't stay confined to the research teams. Word spread through academic channels, across interspecies forums, and into policy meetings. Debate erupted quietly, formally, but with weight. Could a genetically superior predator be considered truly dominant if it faltered under pressure from a wild-born, unmodified animal? The Durrell academic institutions took the incident seriously. A special committee was formed to examine not just the incident itself, but the broader implications. Was the Durrell model of apex design fundamentally flawed? While the committees argued and reviewed data, Jonathan was asked to stay on as an Earthside advisor. The students, still shaken but now deeply curious, followed him as he took them into deeper corners of Earth's wilderness. Their next stop was central Nepal, not for another tiger, but for a very different lesson. They hiked into the mid-elevation forests with a local ranger named Tenzin, and a mountain ecologist, Dr. Aileen Perez. The target of the trip was the clouded leopard, a smaller, more elusive feline known for incredible climbing skills and an uncanny ability to disappear in plain sight. "We won't find it unless it wants to be found," Aileen warned as they set up camera traps and left motion-stripped scent markers. "Then how do you study it?" asked Tavel, the quietest of the Durrell group. Aileen smiled. "Patience, patterns, and trusting that it leaves just enough evidence if you're paying attention." For 3 days, the Durrell scanned tracks, analyzed scat, and reviewed footage. Blurry glimpses of a tail, a paw, the shimmer of patterned fur high in the canopy. At night, they listened to Tenzin's stories of near misses, of cattle vanishing without a sound, of animals that killed only what they needed. On the 4th morning, one camera recorded the clouded leopard eating from a kill. It paused, looked at the camera directly, and then vanished into fog. "It knew it was being watched," Tail murmured. "And didn't care," Jonathan added, "because it was in control." Tavel clicked softly. "It does not fear surveillance." "Some animals know the land better than any drone," Jonathan said. "They've learned how to survive by avoiding attention altogether." That night, around the fire, the students were unusually quiet. Finally, Tavel spoke. "We believed superiority was about efficiency, but we've seen efficiency doesn't mean survivability." "Survivability," Jonathan replied, "means knowing when to engage and when not to, something your Kalaeth never learned." Tail nodded. "Until the tiger taught it." Back at the lab, the Kalaeth was now alert and mobile. Its wounds had mostly healed, though muscular scarring was still visible. Range of motion tests showed a minor deficit in its left shoulder. Its gait was steady but slower. It no longer engaged enrichment tasks with the same mechanical precision. It would pause, circle, reassess, and sometimes it would walk away altogether. Tail observed for hours. "It's not behaving according to programming," he said. "It's learning outside it," Jonathan replied. They ran a simple test. A decoy target was placed in an open field, easy prey. Previously, the Kalaeth would have closed in within seconds. Now, it hesitated, circled, approached, then backed away, scanned the tree line, and only after nearly 4 minutes did it make a cautious advance. It wasn't fear, it was caution, a learned calculation, an awareness that something, somewhere, might be watching. That wasn't in its design, and yet it had changed. At a symposium held 1 week later in Geneva, Jonathan and Tail presented a joint paper titled Emergent Risk Response in Apex-Engineered Fauna, a case study in field-induced behavior adaptation. The reaction was immediate. Some scholars dismissed it. Others called it groundbreaking. But the most interesting responses came from the behavioral sciences. "This isn't just a predator adapting," said one Terran neurologist. "It's a predator accepting that it is not alone at the top." In a joint interview, Jonathan explained, "The Kalaeth didn't fail because it lacked strength or speed. It failed because it underestimated its environment. Tigers, real tigers, don't rely on force alone. They rely on history, territory, experience. That's not programmable, that's earned." The Durrell student cohort was flooded with requests for further study, but they declined. Instead, they returned to Earth's forests, not with predators this time, but to observe the ones already here. They embedded with indigenous trackers in Sumatra. They followed snow leopards through Ladakh. They watched dingoes in the Australian outback. They studied jaguar behavior from boats on the Amazon. And at every stop, they asked one question: what do these animals know that ours do not? One night, months later, Jonathan received a message from Tavel. The Kalaeth has started tracking patterns in its enclosure. Not prey, just movement, wind, shadows. It is watching things it once ignored. Jonathan smiled. It's starting to think like something that could survive here. Tavel replied, "We designed it to be a hunter. Earth taught it to be humble." And then, after a pause, we're beginning to understand which is more important. The Caliph was never released again. After extensive discussion between Earth's Wildlife Commission and the Drell Bioethics Council, it was decided that placing it back into the wild would pose too many unpredictable risks, not just to local ecosystems, but to the Caliph itself. Not because it couldn't survive, but because Earth, as they had all come to realize, wasn't a proving ground. It was a living, ancient system, full of strategies honed not in labs, but in struggle. And Earth didn't take kindly to arrogance. The Caliph was relocated to a semi-open biome within an off-Earth sanctuary, a hybrid forest-meadow complex in low gravity designed to give it space and safety, monitored but unrestricted in behavior. What fascinated the researchers most wasn't its hunting style anymore, it was what it chose not to hunt. Jonathan visited the sanctuary 3 months later, invited to advise on behavioral data. He watched the Caliph from a glass overlook, where the creature stood still in tall, rustling grass, its back to the cameras. Birds flitted above, rodent analogs skittered underfoot. The Caliph did nothing. It's no longer responding to prey patterns, one of the behavioral techs explained. Not the way it used to. What is it doing then? Jonathan asked. The tech hesitated. Watching. It waits hours in one place, doesn't move. When it does, it's slow, it circles, then returns. Does it kill anything? Not in weeks, not since we ran the tiger footage again. Jonathan folded his arms. So it remembers. More than that, it seems aware. Like it's thinking through the risk every time. It won't even chase if there's tree cover nearby. Jonathan turned back to the field. It learned to respect the blind spot. The Durrell students, now formal researchers, published their final report under a new title, Field Humility, Predator Cognitive Shift in Post-Conflict Conditions. They were invited to present on 3 worlds. In every presentation, they played 2 videos side by side. One, the Caliph stalking in its first days on Earth, flawless, confident, deadly. The other, the tiger, barely visible, blending through foliage, approaching silently until it launched. The pause after the tiger video was always the same. Long. Uncomfortable. Tayil would then say, simply, the Caliph was stronger, faster, more advanced, but it lacked experience, and it lacked doubt. Tiva would add, Earth's predators survive not through dominance, but through knowing when not to be seen, when not to strike. And the room would stay quiet. Then the questions would begin. Jonathan returned to Earth full-time, settling into a quiet research position in North Carolina. He turned down larger advisory roles. He didn't want the spotlight, but he still answered messages from the students, now scattered across projects from Mars to Topherine space. One message stood out. It came from Tavel. 3 months after the final report, we have begun designing a new series. Not apex predators, but adaptive ones. Creatures that can learn from failure, not just survive it. They'll be slower, less efficient, but they'll watch. They'll wait. They'll think twice. Jonathan wrote back with just one word: good. Nearly a year after the tiger incident, he took a trip back to the Sundarbans. He walked the same forest paths, checked the same camera sites, and returned to the grove where the Caliph had nearly bled out. The brush had grown thicker. No sign remained. He sat for a long time, quietly. A local guide joined him, an older man named Surojit, who had heard fragments of the story through Wildlife Patrol gossip. Is it true, Surojit asked, the alien beast, that a tiger beat it? Jonathan smiled. It didn't beat it. It reminded it that this isn't its place. The guide nodded, satisfied. As they left, Jonathan paused by a tree. Just at the base, half hidden in the dirt, was a single claw mark. 4 clean lines, wide-spaced, faded but unmistakable. He didn't say anything, just looked for a moment, then moved on. Because some lessons don't need to be rewritten. They just need to be remembered.